Hello everyone, welcome back to Bebeflapula. Today we're gonna do a philosophical discussion. With me today I have Primož Vidovič, who one thing that we agree upon is to view philosophy as this kind of dialectical process that is way more interesting and fruitful in this lively form of two people conversing and together.
Or more.
Or more, of course, and going towards an idea than academic journals can do. That's a sentence. So, hello, welcome to my podcast.
Hello, Aljoša, and hello to all the viewers. Happy to be here.
Well, so where do we start?
Well, what was the topic that we decided upon?
Yeah, so in general, we said we're going to talk about self-help literature and how the problems underlying the projects of self-help in common in pop culture.
Yeah, I guess I can start with a question. Is your channel a self-help channel?
Well, not this one, but my other one is. So that's a very relevant question then, because I try to do this kind of philosophical therapy on my channel, and well, I'm not a therapist, so obviously I must be making some mistakes.
So maybe try to explain to me, what exactly are you trying to do with these videos that you're making?
Okay, so I think what I'm trying to do is share an idea of having an open attitude towards life's questions, not accepting easy answers and accepting that, but instead accepting this process of philosophy, of the ongoing investigation of life, and in the meantime maybe discover some valuable answers that you do not get too attached to, I suppose. I think that's the general attitude that I want to share. But also, not only that, the self-help part, I suppose, is to present different ways of coping with life to people.
Okay. So I guess my next question is, why do we, or maybe the question that we should start from is, why is there currently a need for something like that?
Is there not always a need for that?
I guess there is, but even given your current viewership numbers, there seems to be quite a strong need for that, and a certain audience just waiting to find videos like this. So what space are you entering with these videos?
I see.
This is turning into an interview.
Yeah. No, yeah, I see. Like, so to explain Bebeflapula.
I'm Socrates here.
What's you're what?
I'm Socrates.
Yeah.
Trazimachus.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So Bebeflapula is a channel that for a couple of years I've been working on, but never quite got maybe the viewership that I wanted, I suppose, because I was focusing solely on technical philosophical questions and interesting things to think about. But now with this new YouTube channel, I delve into this existential therapist mode of doing philosophy, and it seems to be working. I mean, it seems like I said, yeah, that more people are in the need of that right now. But are they not always in the need for that? Is not that the most appealing, the commonly appealing part of philosophy? Philosophy as something that helps you cope with life?
First of all, you should talk nearer to your microphone.
Okay, we will. Okay, I will see that in the footage.
This is how we do self-help.
Yeah.
And the next question, to your question, I'm not sure if that is what philosophy is about, or whether it should be about that. It doesn't seem to me that it is, in fact, the role of philosophy in contemporary life, because I think the people playing key roles in this self-help movement are not actually philosophers. Even Jordan Peterson is a psychologist trying to be a philosopher.
Yeah,
I guess this is the first snub at Jordan Peterson.
Yeah, 5 minutes in.
Click like, subscribe.
Yeah, but still, like, through history, was not the main appeal of philosophy to like common people the therapeutic role, or like the role of, well, telling you what to do in life, how to live
Common
your life.
people,
Yeah, well, the non-philosophy.
the white males that had a lot of money.
Yeah, okay, that's
So even in the start, it wasn't really in like with Socrates, it wasn't really something that he did with normal, regular working people. It was something he did with the rich elite of Athens. But I agree that it did become, in the Hellenistic period, with the Stoics and Epicureans, it became more accepting of the general lay public. But that stopped pretty quickly, didn't it? Like even in the medieval age, philosophy became subservient to theology, and then it became more of an academic pursuit in the universities, trying to nitpick at arguments of the existence of God and the prime mover and all the subtleties of Aristotle. But it kind of lost this immediate touch with everyday life. And did it ever really regain it?
I mean, with the existentialists, it did, right?
That's like 2,500 years later. What went wrong?
I see. I mean,
or right? Because maybe this is the better development for philosophy. It was misguided and naive to think that chatting about topics like what is justice could have any substantial impact on the well-being of a person. Maybe it's better that this is like a kind of a scientific pursuit, like the, I guess, logical positivists or whatever thought of just analyzing language concepts and trying to tread the ground for real science.
Yeah. But that leaves you blind, right? In life, that leaves you, because then you have to say like what to do with ethics and like other questions about how to concretely live your life. The logical positivists, most of them would say, well, those questions are not really something that we can meaningfully tackle. It maybe comes down to emotional attitudes.
Maybe you should check on the phone if everything is recording.
Yeah, okay, I can do that.
In the meantime. Okay, it's still recording.
It is recording. Okay, I didn't check the time though. I have no idea how far into the conversation we are. But what I was trying to say is that I think, I mean, it leaves you blind if you treat philosophy as this technical tool to help you solve puzzles. I mean, then you can't really meaningfully tackle the really important stuff, like how to live your life and what should you do in life, right?
But you said yourself, like in this positivist vein, there's nothing you can really say about these things.
Yes.
So what does philosophy contribute?
I mean, according to this view, nothing. It is simply a tool to analyze scientific language. But I don't think, I mean, then you have those same people, the logical positivists, for example, like Maurice Schlick, who would then go on talk about the meaning of life for his whole life. For example, Wittgenstein, he said, well, now we have to be silent, but then he wrote 10 books after he said that we have to be silent. I mean, there's obviously a lot to say about those supposedly meaningless questions, right? And I think that if we view philosophy too narrowly as this technical tool, then we just deny ourselves the options of dealing the important questions. The same like with the... We make a similar move like the scientists, the scientism supporters of this time, like Stephen Hawking or like Neil deGrasse Tyson or Bill Nye, who say, yeah, well, philosophy is dead. We don't need philosophy. Science can answer all the questions. But what they do, they support this very narrow philosophy of scientism, and then they don't have to talk with you about whether scientism is the right philosophy, because they don't do philosophy. It just seems like you cut off some questions, but then in a way that makes you blind. It makes you blind, I suppose.
I think that the problem is, or the question then is, what is philosophy adding to these discussions? What is it about the philosophical method, whatever it may be, that it can deal with these topics that you've mentioned, that science can't in quite the same manner? So why does Wittgenstein, despite saying, what was Wittgenstein? I don't know. Write books after that, and what does this philosophy that he keeps on doing consist of?
Well, I mean, Wittgenstein specifically, his philosophy consists of dialogues with an imaginary, how do you say, someone that you talk to. Well, he treats the reader as he is having a conversation, as if he's having a conversation.
Just like
so
we are.
Yeah, so yeah, very in this vein of dialogue. So I mean, first of all, I would just say, is it even possible to tackle life's questions in a way that would not be classified as philosophy? Like, what would you do? Like, it's not just asking these questions automatically something that leads you into the field of philosophy. It's not philosophy. I mean, if it's a method, then it's a very wide method of just trying to, well, tackle questions in a not necessarily well, structured way, I suppose.
That's a daring claim.
Is it?
I think it depends what philosopher you look at.
Yeah, but
for example, Socrates was fairly unstructured, just asking each other questions like we are.
Yeah, I mean, it can be structured, of course.
Then you get Kant.
Yeah, it can be structured.
Structured as fuck.
It can be structured, but I guess the point is that, okay, maybe structured, maybe I shouldn't put it like that, but just isn't philosophy just the general, just thinking about stuff? I mean, in the end of the day, like, if you ask like a question like, what is the meaning of life? Can you ask this question as a non-philosophical question? I mean, I suppose you can, but
what turns it? Yeah. I guess that's actually a good question. But what's the difference between a philosopher asking that question, what's the meaning of life, and someone having a chat at the bar after getting drunk? What's the meaning of life? Is he being philosophical? Is he a philosopher? And before all the audience starts to think that we've gone on a tangent, because this has essentially become a meta-philosophical discussion.
Yeah.
I think it actually, we are still onto the same thing, because maybe this self-help aspect of philosophy actually has to do exactly with this more everyday philosophy with this asking of questions like, what is the meaning of life? That is where I think we could say, on one hand, maybe this is a more risky claim, where philosophy originates from, and also where it is anchored. Even for example, for a university professor discussing very fine details of cognition or moral theory, is in essence connected to his basic curiosity of trying to understand. And why is he trying to understand? Because he's trying to answer some riddle in his existential situation, even if it is very mediated by the time it reaches the specific question. So what is the categorical imperative in Kant? I'm not sure if I'm asking a question at this point or if I'm just talking, but I guess what you said, that philosophy is connected with these existential questions, and this wide theory, non-committed way of examining questions and their possible answers. This is, I think, something that originates from a very primordial existential situation of humans. Would you agree? Does that speak to you, or is this too philosophical anthropology and Helmut Plessner?
I don't know. I didn't see any specific problem right now. Something that I wouldn't necessarily agree with. I suppose. I mean, there's so many ways in which we can unpack this. I don't even know.
Maybe we can ask a different question in relation to this, and it'll help us reconnect with self-help. why are we philosophizing?
Okay. Yeah. Wow, that's a tough question. I mean,
Because
obviously because we are curious, right?
Curious, yeah, like name drop Aristotle,
Yeah, but-
metaphysics, philosophy begins in wonder or something.
Yeah, but it has to be that, right? Like why I mean, it has to be part of the desire to know. I suppose like the scientist also has this attitude a little bit, but the philosopher just doesn't commit to any particular methods, because unlike the scientist, he is willing to go even deeper with the desire to know, and even question himself and the roots of what it means to have knowledge and so on, right?
Yeah, I agree, but I've just been thinking. Yeah, you have this in Aristotle. You have this wonder, this desire to know.
Yeah.
This is a more scientific kind of desire to know. It's I think we could say it is more directed out,
Yeah, by Aristotle.
beyond, and towards objects.
Yeah.
Whereas if we go back to Socrates and to the maxim displayed on the Delphic,
Mm.
what is sanctuary or whatever, temple?
Maybe sanctuary, yeah.
I think
Or temple, I don't know.
whatever.
Yeah.
We didn't study philosophy.
Yeah.
That you have to know yourself. And then Socrates takes this up to mean that to know yourself is essentially to take care of yourself.
Mm.
So he makes this very explicit link that this philosophical curiosity, this attempt, this effort to know is very much an ethical effort. It is an effort connected with one's existential situation.
Mm-hmm.
Something which gets a little, I think, abbreviated with Aristotle already.
Yeah, I see.
It's already
Yeah.
more scientific and more disconnected from the
Yeah,
objects of his study.
Yeah.
Whereas for Socrates, all the shit he talks about with with his lot about what is justice, what is knowledge, it's very much connected with the everyday conversation from which these questions emerged.
Maybe we could say that Socrates is a little bit more paradigmatic of a philosopher, because Aristotle was willing to move on from these epistemological core questions and go on into investigating the world, while Socrates just repeatedly wanted to tackle these core questions of how to live, what it even means to know, can we know anything, and so on, while Aristotle just moves on at some point at least.
Yeah. What I wonder is, what's the starting situation?
Mm-hmm.
Who is closer to the starting situation of the human? Do we first begin just to wonder?
Yeah, I see.
Or do we first begin to wonder about ourselves? If we go a little further back to the pre-Socratics, they began to wonder about the world.
Yeah.
And then we have in the Apology by Plato, Socrates saying that he tried to wonder at the world and to get to know the world, and he learned all these. I think it's Apology anyway. He tried to learn about like these the first natural philosophers, Thales, Heraclitus, and all the other guys.
All the other guys, yeah.
But he realized that you could get no final answers to those questions. It was just a lot of speculation, I guess, because even then there was no reliable method like we have today of getting to know nature. And that's why he did this inward turn.
Yeah.
But then in that situation, maybe the first impulse is actually to wander out rather than in.
I mean, why does that matter, this starting point? Okay. Yeah, okay, I see. I don't know, maybe...
It matters. It matters to your discussion because we're wondering about the self-help dimension of philosophy and how it compares with self-help. And we kind of are trying to... you were trying to say, and I guess I'm too obvious that I agree in essence with what you're saying, that... this self-help dimension is something very primary to philosophy. But now we've come to consider maybe actually this isn't what is the primary moment. The primary moment is to get to know the world, and then you make this inner turn.
But is there such a difference between asking about the world or asking about yourself? Is this not so deeply interconnected that maybe as philosophy, I don't know, maybe if you are born into a certain backdrop of established ideas, then when you're gonna have this philosophical attitude, you will simply wonder about the world, because you will simply not have these seeds of self, how do you say, just questioning the idea of self and so on. But if the same philosophical attitude would be applied in a different historical backdrop, then it would lead to questions of what is the self, or how does, I don't know, my cognition mediate reality or stuff like that. It just comes down to like I wouldn't say that it's necessarily more philosophical or less philosophical to wonder about the self, or just wonder about the external world. It is just a mode of philosophy that came to a point of questioning the self, or one that didn't. But if you truly want to, what matters, I would say, is just the pure impulse of trying to understand the world and not committing to any pre-established ideas or methods, I suppose. Does that make sense?
Okay, let me think about it. And in the meantime, maybe we should stop and check if everything's actually...
Okay, so intermission. So where were we?
I have no idea, actually.
Okay, so we're talking about self-help.
Yeah, we're talking about self-help, and
Yeah.
I think you were trying to make the point that in philosophy, this ethical aspect and this more scientific aspect are actually intertwined.
I mean, not necessarily, just that not
at all what I was talking about.
I just think that one is maybe not necessarily more philosophical than the other one. It can come down to historical context, but
so neither is first.
Yeah, maybe not. I just think that when we talk about philosophy, we are talking about just the curiosity and wonder that is not being committed to any presupposition or pre-established methods that one would have to follow when studying whatever he wants to study, life, I suppose.
Okay, so in this sense, we've established the possibility of philosophy being a kind of self-help pursuit.
Yeah,
because it is possible for it to. No, I don't know what I'm trying to say now.
Okay, then let me just cut in. I think that maybe
save me, Socrates, from my own lack of knowledge.
I think that maybe self-help is not. There's a lot of self-help that is obviously not philosophy, and there's a lot of philosophy that is not self-help. But when we talk about philosophy that is self-help, we are talking about a genuine desire to understand maybe life or what's going on and how we can make our lives conform more to our values, but without commitments to presuppositions about anything, I suppose, or any methods in which we can achieve that, and also no commitment to the end result. Like maybe a lot of self-help literature is like, yeah, how do we get happy? But maybe the philosophical kind would admit that maybe in the end you find out that life sucks and, you're not supposed to be happy or something. I don't know.
I think that's a very specific way to take philosophy as self-help. This, I guess, more existentialist realization.
But what would be
of the senselessness of existence?
But what would be a philosophical self-help that would not aim at that?
I guess the Socratic question: what is the good life? How to live? What are the values that make my life worth living?
Oh, okay.
And I guess that this is maybe because we are both the children of our times. That we take this more negative presupposition that if we ask this question of the meaning of life, there's bound to be some kind of a negative existentialist answer. It's all absurd. We're all just Sisyphus going up the hill in a never-ending, pointless exercise.
Uh-huh.
But this is not an idea that would have crossed people in the ancient times, maybe with this gravitas,
Uh-huh.
nor in the medieval times when you had this eschatology of Christianity to
Yeah.
motivate you. It's a fairly modern idea. So I'm not sure I would wish to determine philosophy as self-help in this very specific, more pessimistic direction.
I mean,
I think we need to keep it more open than that.
but
Because otherwise it's going to be very hard to sell it to people.
yeah, but I don't. Am I closing it off in this pessimistic? Am I not just saying that I'm leaving it open, like a true philosophical attitude would leave it open, the possibility of pessimism?
The possibility that it all sucks.
Yeah.
Why
like-
not to the possibility that it's good?
Yeah, that as well, of course.
Yeah,
but that's the
then
presupposition.
why did you take this position first?
Because it's taken for granted. I take it
because
for
it's true.
granted. Yeah, but I take it for granted because most of self-help literature paints life as this thing that we try to make good, right? So, but a philosophical kind would be like, in the end, maybe open to the idea, oh well, we tried to help you, but now we showed you that life sucks. Sorry, you know?
I just feel like that this is a danger and something that kind of stereotypes philosophy in the eyes of people.
Okay.
Like it tends to be, when contrasted with self-help, it tends to be presented exactly in this way that you've posed. That it's the more realistic way. It dispels the illusions
Yeah, but
of some kind of optimism that isn't justified and so forth. And there's this implication that it's going to necessarily suck at least a little bit more than what the self-helper offers you.
Okay.
I don't want to determine it in this direction, because I guess it's just because I'm so surrounded currently with just ancient philosophy and reading the dialogues of Plato and reading Aristotle and so forth. There's this overwhelming sense of optimism that this philosophical pursuit is not directed towards the realization of all that everything is just heinous illusion. Everything is destined towards some kind of suffering, but it is possible with an effort of taking care of yourself by knowing yourself, and in this process also knowing about the things around yourself, I guess.
I see.
It is possible to progress towards a fairly optimistic vision, either by contemplating the ideas of things themselves, as with Plato, or what's in Aristotle, contemplating the prime mover or something.
Is it? I don't know. No,
I don't-
it's just
we don't study philosophy.
But I mean, maybe my undertone of what I was saying was maybe too pessimist, but
Kierkegaard.
yeah. But okay. So you think it's important to stress the fact that philosophy is not this thing that came to be seen after the existentialist?
Yeah, I think it's important to not color it with a very specific affective tone,
Yeah, I see. Okay, that's fair enough.
or at least not a negative one.
Oh, but positive is okay.
I think it should be a positive tone, but
Yeah.
I guess this is a dangerous claim, because then you might say, so what is it about making ourselves feel good? Is that just another like sophistic exercise to make yourself feel better? Why is it better than self-help? Isn't that what self-help is doing? But I think this positive attitude is grounded better than what self-help is doing, because it just simply gives you the option that you might have these positive discoveries simply by getting to know yourself and getting to know life.
Yeah.
Not as something you make up because you want to feel better,
Yeah.
but as something that is inherent to life. And I guess in a certain way, because philosophy points you towards the fact that all these values, all these affects are intentional or unintentional interpretations
Mm-hmm.
And philosophy opens these interpretations up. You don't have to take the myth of Sisyphus and cast it in this absurdist existential fashion that it's a pointless exercise.
Mm.
It's simply life. You go up and then you go down. Why would you interpret this as pointlessness?
Mm. I mean, you can, but that's still philosophy if you do. But you don't have to. That's the point, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you don't have to. But an idea that just crossed my mind is in regards to conceptions of time,
Mm-hmm.
where you have these more linear conceptions of time, like we have today. We started at the birth of Christ or something, the Big Bang,
Yeah.
and now we're just progressing towards some infinite endpoint of history and developing to somewhere.
Yeah.
But then you have these more circular conceptions of time,
Mm.
in which I think this Sisyphean exercise wouldn't have been perceived as negative.
I see.
It would have even a reflection of the nature of reality, that
Yeah.
there are these cycles. You go up, there's a certain adventure, and then it all restarts.
I
And
see.
that's not a condemnation of the order of the universe, but simply a reflection of it.
Yeah, fact of life. I see. So it would be interesting to see a Buddhist study of the myth of Sisyphus.
Yeah,
That would be
actually very interesting.
Yeah. Okay. I see.
I guess in regards to Buddhism, maybe we can touch on that because Buddhism
maybe we
is
can,
is very often used,
that's true. Yeah.
resorted to
Yeah.
in these self-help circles. I know it
Yeah.
was my personal experience in high school, trying to find some kind of some way through, I don't know, these teenage
Yeah.
emotional problems.
So you look to
that
the east.
I went
Yeah.
through Buddhism
Yeah.
first.
Okay.
But my problem with Buddhism is that I think it's pretty pessimistic, or maybe not necessarily pessimistic. It is world denying.
I mean, it focuses on very negative aspects. Actually, the main focus of Buddhism is the negative fact that life is suffering. Yeah. And then what you do is cope with the suffering and try to escape the suffering.
Yeah,
Right,
and
yeah.
the way you escape it, as I understand it, maybe our viewers will tear us apart for misinterpreting.
Well, we don't study
tradition.
philosophy, so
We don't know. We know almost nothing about.
Yeah. But it's okay. We don't study philosophy.
But as I understand it, is that you reach this state of non-suffering, essentially by non-feeling, by non-existing. There's no self left.
Yeah, because there was never a self in the first place.
A self.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's basically a kind of oneness,
Yeah.
I guess, which a lot of mysticisms aim towards as well. But I'm not sure I want to be one with everything else. Could we be having this discussion if we were just aiming to meditate ourselves into oneness with the universe and just forget about all this suffering shit?
Yeah, but then we could contemplate the ideas. So that wouldn't be too bad either.
But are they worth it?
Is there like Plato when he talked about the how is it in English, the island of the blessed, when he talks about isn't that kind of the same?
But Plato also said that it's the beauty of this world that teaches us and reminds us about beauty itself.
But then the body is something that holds back the soul, no? And then when you go contemplate the ideas,
can you skip it?
Can you skip it? Oh,
should you skip this step, or is it a necessary progression?
So you think Plato would say no, but Buddhists would say yes?
I don't know. But if we look at, I guess Plato differed on this point. I think he had a more concrete real world self and a more mystical tendency. In the Republic, the philosopher, after seeing the ideas themselves, and is inspired and become good itself, goes back into the cave and tries to help the others.
Yeah, okay. I see.
And he rules a society. So what is this? I guess if we insisted on this mystical interpretation of Plato, that he ultimately wants us to go to the island of the blessed and just have a good time there and contemplating the ideas, is he just trying to develop a society which is going to collectively aim towards its self annihilation at the end, just migrate en masse to the Isle of the Blessed?
But no,
I don't think so.
you can only go there once you reach the age of 60, no? So after you've done your part.
I've forgotten the numbers.
Yeah, I think it's something like that. So you can only do that once you like. It's blessed retirement. Actually, it's like some Los Angeles stuff. I think.
I know there's like you have these multiple reincarnations and stuff, and then only after a certain number of reincarnation, if you keep choosing the good philosophical life, you get to this place of just the good itself in the heavens among the gods.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe if we bring this.
Yeah, I'm thinking how to tie this back to the question of self-help.
Philosophy has this strong tendency of some parts of philosophy are aimed towards transcendence of this world here. Self-help isn't. Self-help is just trying to make our life here better.
Yeah,
isn't it?
I don't know. There has to be like Christian self-help or something. I'm sure there's like self-help books all across the border. No, all across the board.
Maybe if we look at the most famous ones, like for example Dale Carnegie, How to Win and Influence Friends. It's one of the old classics from the start of the last century. It's just how do you make friends?
Yeah.
And then you have.
But what about this 12 rules for life? I mean, it is about making your life here.
Okay, maybe.
But there has to be.
I don't
Christian.
think Peterson is representative of the self-help genre. He's a little too fucked for that.
Okay. But there has to be self-help that is. I mean, I wouldn't say that it is necessarily aimed at making our lives better here. There has to be Christian self-help that makes you help.
Is that really the thing we think about self-help? Because I think the allure of the self-help genre to me seems to be that it's very neutral. It can accommodate all kinds of religions, but that also means it means it can't commit to specific, for example, Christian.
I'm not sure because there's also like a lot of self-help literature that I feel like aims at this immortality project. Of like just how to be the most successful you, how to,
so how is it immortality?
In the way that you just accumulate wealth and power, and in the end, live through all of your projects so that your name can be remembered. I suppose like just this idea of successfulness.
Is it really that's what it's aiming for?
I mean, I feel like that's
I'm
most
not buying that. What you're selling.
I feel like that's most of success. The idea of success is like just aimed at this. I feel like most people have this death anxiety which try to tackle with the idea of our immortality.
They have what?
Death anxiety.
Okay.
I think. What did you?
I mean, this is getting Freudian.
Death anxiety. I feel like, and I think that most of our people's projects that aim as like success, are not something that necessarily only aims at making their life more like better and gaining respect, but also tackling the idea of that with the idea that you truly self-actualize and leave something behind. I feel like
I think you would have to provide me with evidence for me to
citation.
I don't think that's what a self-help in general is aiming towards. I think it's very
that's in general. I'm just saying
that I've read is very practical, very concrete. How to make friends, how to make money, how to organize your days to get through the day
I
better.
agree. I don't agree with the claim that it's necessarily about that. Like you said, that self-help literature aims on...
not necessarily. I'm not sure what I said. We can rewind and
I'm not sure. Maybe I misheard something. But like I think
this is something Socrates didn't have.
Yeah, that's true.
But in general, I think
maybe
mainstream self-help.
I mean, maybe I'm psychoanalyzing this too much, because then I could claim, maybe what I try to claim is that it comes down to our tackling life with the idea of conquering death with a immortality project, denying death through our projects and its health. Like because I see a lot of this in self-help literature. I see a lot of this entrepreneurship, a lot of this idea of like maximizing your projects, the success of your projects, self-actualizing yourself in the most you can, but this feels like something that aims at the immortality project, not at making your life better, because what it essentially does is it makes your life into a like hellish routine. Like, okay, you wake up, you do that, you do that, you do that, you do that. Like, it is not aimed at pleasure at all, or making your life better. I think
that's exactly the case with that self-help is making. Just get through life better. We don't know about what comes after. There's no immortality. I don't think there's a promise of immortality. There might be in some sort.
I mean, symbolical immortality, right?
Even
symbolical, but that's maybe a different
I don't know
discussion.
I think it's related to this discussion, and it's an interesting reading of self-help, which maybe a lot of people will relate to. But I think I would actually say that this is exactly the problem with self-help. It doesn't have this promise. It doesn't tell you where you're getting. It's just telling you a bunch of things that you have to do. You have to exercise, you have to meditate, you have to be mindful, you have to have good interpersonal relationship, you have to stand up to your boss, you shouldn't be confrontational, you have to listen to your spouse, but you should also be assertive and not letting walk over you.
But it never clearly specifies what it is aimed at.
It's a million of prescriptions which it tries to give you without ever really telling you what you're trying to reach. It has this idea of, I guess, happiness. Or maybe sometimes it calls it just well-being. Sometimes it's an inner peace or something, whatever. But it doesn't say to what end. Or if it says that happiness is that end, it has actually very little to say about what happiness is.
Yeah, so maybe that's what I try to say. Maybe that's that like self-help literature doesn't explicate what it is all aimed to. So there's this implied aim that most of us have, I suppose, but maybe not most of us. I didn't think this through. This conquering of death, this just making your life purposeful, so you can, even though you die, you can lead on a symbolical immortality through the things that you did in life, I suppose. Maybe that's a very specific reading, now come to think of it.
I mean, what I think we can get from what you're saying is this is where we return back to philosophy. Because to answer these questions, you can't just write a self-help book and give another 100 prescriptions of what to do, because they all rest on certain suppositions for the explanation of which you need to ask really deep questions. And this is something that is possible within philosophy, not possible, necessary, because even throughout this discussion, we started with a simple question of comparing philosophy and self-help, and then we ended up in meta-philosophy, and now we're talking about death anxiety. Because it's all interconnected, and you have to follow these paths to be able to, I think, to gain the right to be able to tell someone how to live their lives, you should have some kind of an understanding of this, or you risk simply being a preacher, speaking some kind of dogma. And I think that's dangerous, and we can talk about the dangers and the shortcomings. But maybe this is the point at which philosophy and self-help both meet and part ways at the same time.
So there happen to be some philosophers at least that preach, I suppose, and some preachers that do philosophy.
For example,
Wittgenstein, Nietzsche. For example, Nietzsche is maybe a good example, because Thus Spoke Zarathustra, for example, is just him preaching how to live life, but at this point.
But he, in regards to happiness, which is kind of at the root of self-help, he denies happiness.
That is true. That is true. But he comes from a different time. He says only the Englishmen care about happiness. That's what you said.
But exactly. like the preachers, and even the preachers in philosophy are really preaching they're not giving answers, really. Or at least they're not the answers that self-help tends to give.
Yeah.
Like
Okay.
when he's giving us a way of life, he gives no concern to how happy we're going to be, because he thinks it would make us into shapeless, edgeless, I don't know, sand or something like that.
But
like that.
he does then give you advice how to, I suppose, live an authentic life, and he doesn't question that in the book, for example.
Yeah,
I mean, he's just committed to different ideals at that point, but he is still preaching. He's essentially writing something that really reads like a Bible, right? But yeah, that's just so there's a lot of fringe area, I suppose, of philosophers doing things that might seem unphilosophical, and non-philosophers doing things that seem philosophical. So I suppose there's a lot of gray area, but then we have this we can think of this paradigmatic philosophical self-help book that offers no answers, but only gives you, I suppose, a way in which to tackle questions, just shows you how we can think about stuff. And then the paradigmatic self-help book that doesn't show you how to arrive at the answers that it is giving. It is just giving you answers. It is just telling you what to do, and
and is always doing it with citing authorities.
Yeah.
Either it is listing scientific studies. That's the main form today, which I guess can be legitimate in a certain sense, but it also pretty much tells the reader, you shouldn't question this.
Yeah,
this has been scientifically determined.
Yeah, you don't have to think about it.
And this is what happiness is.
Yeah.
If you just do what I'm telling you, and then it's going to all click together.
Yeah.
You have scientific studies, then you have quotes from famous people. Steve Jobs said that, so it must be true. There's quotations of, for example, old religious texts. This has been cropping up lately. I've noticed the religious texts which have been doubted for quite a while as some kind of fairy tales are again being recognized for their metaphorical philosophical value, I guess. For example, with Peterson, he's always going on about the Bible, kind of whole Bible reading club with his pals.
But the idea is that it has there's some deeper knowledge encapsulated in this text, because it was being passed on from person to person to person, from one generation to another. So there has to be something. So there's this authority, and you should pretty much buy into that. Yeah. This is not what you get with a philosopher. A philosopher takes you through his analytic process. Yeah, most of the time. Yeah. Which you can often completely disagree with, and just go with him on the journey because the professor demands you to, even if you completely disagree. But that's the part of the process of philosophy, disagreement. Yeah. On the other hand, if I disagree with the self-help book that I'm reading, it kind of makes the whole exercise moot. Yeah. Why am I reading the advice of some doctor giving me advice how I should be mindful, if I don't actually care much about the endpoint to which mindfulness is supposed to get? Yeah, and on the other hand, they seem to be quite committed to the endpoint, right? They seem to be emotionally invested in this being without true. Ever explaining or explicating what this endpoint is. Yeah, and if you talk to them or say that you disagree, it seems to have an emotional punch, like why are you doubting them, right? While if somebody would disagree with us, we would just be like, okay, we would be genuinely interested, I hope. Most of the things, I suppose. We're only human after a while, but in general, the philosopher, I suppose, would not be committed in such a way in which most people are to their beliefs. Which at least philosophy, maybe we can say, is a practice in this attachment. No, how do you say? Not being emotionally attached. Detached. Detachment. Yeah. The practice of detachment from your beliefs, I suppose. We are still human. I guess someone might argue with that, because philosophers can also be very combative. Like, but that's not Schopenhauer shitting on Hegel for but I don't think that's philosophers not being at their best. That's not philosophers being at their most philosophical then, right? Like communism. Like if you commit like emotionally, then you like take this leap of faith, you stop being philosopher for that amount of time. Yeah, so in this sense, philosophy keeps this open. Yeah. And even though philosophers can't all the time, because they're flawed beings. Yeah.
But so I guess this is a virtue that philosophy has over self-help. It's not dogmatic, and it is willing or even insistent on questioning the basic presupposition on which its answers, its tentative answers, might rest. Whereas self-help is basically just grabbing together in like a collage of quotations and different forms of knowledge with different epistemic credibility without giving much regard to this different. You have in one place astrology and scientific studies these days. Like I was reading just like a Slovene self-help writer. Like on one hand, he's just giving like 5 studies confirming his piece of advice. It's all science. We should trust science in this time and age.
Then the next Slovenian, by the way.
And then on the next page, he's like, but maybe it's all written on in the stars.
I see.
And it's all bundled together. Whereas with philosophy, this really it's hard to sell that.
I mean, if on nothing else, he would think how to make these two compatible, right?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so that's I mean, that's a well enough conclusion, I think, for our first podcast. This idea that I mean, it's okay. Like I guess we can maybe
better.
maybe we will look at this.
But maybe we should end it on a more operatic notion.
Yeah,
because
that is true.
We've kind of managed to portray philosophy as the good guy, but I think in this openness of philosophy is also its greatest flaw as a self-help tool, because it doesn't give you final answers. It gives you no guidelines what you should really do. It's just opening a lot of questions, giving a lot of tentative theories, which always have a bunch of counter arguments pointed at them. And I guess this isn't really something that we can solve easily, because the moment we start giving concrete answers as philosophers, I think we kind of stop being philosophers and move towards something else.
That is true. We have to stop being philosophers in order to live a life, right? I mean, there's a Kierkegaard quote: you can only understand life backwards, but you must live it forwards. So
and this is where philosophy in a certain sense fails. Well, like, how does it help you live forward? Can we really stay in this uncertain, confused moment of constant questioning the basic suppositions?
Of course not.
Or do we sometimes simply have to make practical decisions, like Socrates himself did? He wasn't always asking. He was also making practical decisions, like sending his wife away at his deathbed and his children as well, because he just wanted to have a good chat with his buddies. That's a philosophical answer to the riddles of life, which is not very practical for the 21st century, where we do want to have functional family relationships and not just dedicate our entire existence to this pursuit of knowledge. But I guess to develop this question further, we would need another episode.
Okay, that's good.
What is it that philosophy nonetheless might offer in this process of questioning that could guide someone in a more positive manner? But I don't know nothing about that.
Me neither. Okay, that's good. That's a better ending. Okay, so stay tuned. There's a cliffhanger for you. Thanks for watching. Thank you very much for being here. I suppose we could keep on having these talks and maybe derive at some good questions to ask, but of course no answers. So
it was a pleasure.
Thank you. Okay, thank you for watching. I hope you like this new format. I don't know. We are just winging it. We'll see how it goes. Thank you.